The champagne equivalent of 17 different species fizzed, bubbled, and in one unfortunate case, literally exploded across the grand observatory deck of Celestial Station Prime. Administrator Vekran Holt of the Kelthan Sovereignty watched the celebration with what his species called a smile, though it looked more like a grimace to anyone familiar with actual joy. The holographic displays showed Earth, that little blue marble in the Sol system, now gray and silent for exactly 3 standard years. Finally, chirped Ambassador Quelix, a bird-like Avarian whose feathers ruffled with genuine excitement. 3 years without a single human incident, no wars declared on abstract concepts, no death metal music bleeding through subspace frequencies. His translator chip rendered his melodic clicks into something approaching relief. Vekran nodded slowly, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence as was proper for his kind. The Kelthans had always been the diplomatic species, the record keepers, the ones who remembered things others preferred to forget. Right now, he wished his memory was a bit more selective, because something felt wrong about this party. The plague had come fast. They all agreed on that much. Human scientists called it the Crimson Cascade, because apparently even in Extinction humans needed dramatic names for everything. Within 6 months, Earth went from 8 billion voices screaming into the void to absolute terrifying silence. The galactic community had offered aid, naturally, because that is what civilized species do. They sent medical teams, supplies, and expertise from 14 different biological research institutions. But the humans, stubborn as ever, had sealed their borders and told everyone to stay away. Quarantine protocols, they had said, which seemed reasonable at first. Then the transmissions stopped, the satellites went dark, and Earth became a tomb. The last message was a simple text transmission. We tried. Tell them we tried. Now, 3 years later, the galaxy was throwing a party. Not officially, of course. The public statements all expressed profound sadness at the loss of a developing species. But here, in private among the power brokers and decision-makers, the relief was palpable enough to taste. Good riddance to bad rubbish, announced Trade Minister Zelkor, a gelatinous Florn whose transparent body rippled with bioluminescent patterns of satisfaction. Do you know how much those primates cost us in insurance premiums alone? Every human ship was a disaster waiting to happen. Someone else laughed, a chittering sound that echoed off the transparent aluminum viewing ports. It was true. Frustratingly true. Humans had been in space for barely 2 centuries, and in that time they had caused more incidents, accidents, and oops, we broke physics again, moments than most species managed in millennia. Vekran remembered the Kepler station incident. A human engineer named Marcus Webb had decided that the posted weight limits on a cargo elevator were probably just suggestions. They were not suggestions. The entire station had to be evacuated when the elevator shaft became a temporary railgun that launched 17 tons of mining equipment into orbit. Or the time a human trading vessel, captained by someone called Big Tommy Rodriguez, had accidentally started a brief war between 2 sectors by selling both sides weapons that were technically functional but also technically children's toys from Earth. Foam dart launchers, specifically. The fact that both sides had been too embarrassed to admit they had been fighting with foam darts made the whole situation even more absurd. But there had been good moments too. Vekran thought, though he kept that opinion to himself. Dr. Lisa Okonkwo had revolutionized trauma medicine by asking the simple question, "Have you tried turning it off and on again?" which apparently worked for both computers and certain biological systems. Commander Jackson Wu had saved an entire colony by improvising a radiation shield out of emergency blankets in what he called spite. The humans had a saying, "Hold my beer and watch this." Galactic linguists had spent years trying to translate those 5 words, eventually settling on, "I am about to attempt something that bridges the gap between genius and suicide." It was, they all agreed, the most human phrase ever conceived. Vekran's communicator buzzed a private channel. He excused himself from the celebration, walking past a group of Zemthuri military officers who were reenacting the great human barbecue disaster of 241, with hand puppets. The incident where humans had somehow set fire to a space station's exterior hull using only meat and determination. He reached a quiet corner and activated his holochrome. The face that appeared was young for a Kelthan, barely into her 2nd century. "Administrator, we have a problem," said Coordinator Thress, her 4 eyes wide with something between fear and confusion. "Define problem," Vekran said, because in his experience, problems range from someone used the wrong form to reality is breaking and we are all going to die. With humans involved, even posthumously, either extreme was possible. Therese swallowed, her throat sac inflating nervously. Sir, we are detecting a signal from the Sol system. Origin point, Earth. And it is getting stronger. The party died faster than the humans had, which Vekrin noted with some irony. One moment, 17 species were celebrating their relief. The next, every military, scientific, and governmental communicator in the station started screaming alerts. The holographic Earth, which had been a pleasant gray sphere of silence, now pulsed with a red beacon that seemed to throb with malicious intent. That is not possible, stammered Quelix, his feathers flattening against his body in alarm. We surveyed Earth multiple times. There is nothing alive down there. We checked. Admiral Korth, a massive draconic Racices, looked like someone had taken a crocodile in a tank, and asked, what if we made this angry? Pulled up a tactical display. His claws clicked against the holographic interface with surprising delicacy. The signal is not biological, he growled, his translator rendering his subsonic rumbles into something approximating words. It is technological, and it is broadcasting on 743 different frequencies simultaneously. Vekrin pushed through the crowd, his diplomatic robes swishing around his tri-jointed legs. The main display now showed a signal analysis that made absolutely no sense. The beacon was not just transmitting, it was transmitting coordinates. Thousands of them, all across the galaxy. Someone explain this, demanded Chancellor Morvix, the Zenthari leader whose tentacles were currently knotted in what Vekrin recognized as extreme agitation. Explain how a dead planet is sending signals to locations we did not even know existed. The head of Galactic Intelligence, a Kelthan named Oris, who had exactly zero sense of humor, pulled up a star map. Red dots appeared across the display like a pox. These coordinates correspond to remote locations, moons, asteroids, rogue planets. Some are in systems we have surveyed. Most are not. How many? Vekrin asked, though he already suspected he would not like the answer. 17,406, Oris said flatly. And counting. The signal is still spreading. Someone in the back of the crowd made a noise that the translator rendered as, oh, we are spectacularly screwed. Vekrin had to agree with the sentiment. Humans had been extinct for 3 years. Dead species did not build secret installations across the galaxy, except apparently humans did. We need to investigate, Admiral Korth announced, his tactical mind already working through scenarios. Send probe teams to the nearest coordinates. Find out what these facilities are, and if they are weapons, asked Trade Minister Zelkor, his gelatinous body quivering with fear. The humans were insane. What if they built some kind of doomsday device? What if this is revenge? Vekrin wanted to argue. Wanted to say that humans would not do that. But he remembered Marcus Webb and the elevator incident. He remembered Big Tommy Rodriguez and the foam dart war. He remembered a human scientist named Patricia Chen who had accidentally created a small black hole in her lab and described the experience as a bit of a whoopsie. The humans absolutely would build doomsday devices. The only question was whether they had labeled them properly or just slapped a sticky note on them saying do not touch seriously this time. The first probe team reached the nearest coordinate within 18 hours. It was a moon orbiting a gas giant in an unnamed system, 67 light-years from Earth. The team consisted of military personnel from 3 different species, all armed, all terrified, and all very much aware that they were investigating what might be humanity's final middle finger to the galaxy. Lieutenant Varric, a Zenthari tactical officer, sent back the first images. The facility was buried under 50 meters of rock and ice, accessible only through a tunnel that looked suspiciously like it had been dug by mining equipment. Human mining equipment. Judging by the scorch marks and the graffiti spray-painted on the walls that read "Jenny was here, you are all gonna die." That is not ominous at all, Varric reported, his tentacles gripping his weapon tightly. Proceeding into the facility, it appears to be powered down but intact. The command center watched through Varric's helmet camera as the team descended into the facility. The architecture was unmistakably human. Functional, efficient, and covered in warning labels that ranged from helpful to horrifying. Caution. Airlock. Made sense. Warning, do not feed the singularity did not. They reached a central chamber, massive and circular, filled with equipment that hurt to look at. Not because it was alien, but because it was so aggressively human. Vekrin recognized medical pods, enough to hold maybe 200 individuals. Next to them were storage units, computer banks, and what appeared to be a small nuclear reactor with a handwritten sign that said, She's temperamental but reliable like my ex-wife Carol. Sir, Varric said slowly, his translator struggling with his species equivalent of dread. These are cryopods. Human cryopods. And according to these readings, they are occupied. The command center erupted in chaos. Voices overlapped in 17 different languages, all saying variations of the same thing. This was impossible, this was terrifying, this was exactly what humans would do. Vecran felt his primary heart skip several beats while his backup heart considered joining a monastery. Get out of there, Admiral Korth ordered. Now, do not touch anything, do not even breathe near those pods. But it was too late. The facility had detected visitors, and apparently human technology was designed to be helpful. The lights flickered on, bathing the chamber in sterile white illumination. Computer banks hummed to life with the distinctive whine of Earth-made processors, and in the center of the room a holographic projector activated. The figure that appeared was human, female, wearing what Vecran recognized as a military uniform. She had dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, eyes that had seen too much, and a smile that suggested she knew exactly how her message would be received. Hello, she said, her voice calm and clear. If you are watching this, then Earth went silent as planned. Congratulations, you probably threw a party. How was the champagne? The hologram continued, oblivious to the 17 species currently having various forms of cardiac events in the command center. The woman clasped her hands behind her back in a parade rest stance that was simultaneously casual and military. My name is Captain Elena Frost, United Earth Defense Initiative, and yes, before you ask, we absolutely saw this coming. Vecran's translator chip nearly overheated, trying to process his emotional response. Humans had planned their own extinction. That seemed insane even by human standards, which was saying something considering their standards included extreme ironing and planking. The crimson cascade was not natural. Elena continued, her holographic form pacing back and forth. It was engineered. Not by us, mind you. We are stupid, but we are not that stupid. Someone out there wanted humanity gone. We never figured out who, though we had a betting pool. Jenkins thought it was the Draconi. I thought it was the Floan. Marcus put his money on a species we had not even met yet, which was very Marcus. She paused, and for a moment the confident military facade cracked. We tried to fight it. We really did. Our scientist worked around the clock, but this plague was designed specifically for human biology, and it was perfect. Too perfect. So we made a choice. The hologram changed, showing images of frantic construction, humans working in spacesuits on remote moons and asteroids. We had about 4 months from identification to total collapse. 4 months to build what we called the Genesis Network. 17,406 facilities across the galaxy, each one containing cryopods, genetic material, technology, and everything needed to rebuild. They faked it, breathed Quelix, his feathers standing straight up in shock. They faked their own extinction. Not exactly, Vecran thought, watching the hologram. They had let themselves die, but had planned their resurrection. It was the most human thing imaginable, looking at certain doom and responding with yeah, but what if we tried Plan Z? Elena's hologram smiled, and it was not a nice smile. We knew the galaxy would celebrate. We knew you would throw parties and toast our demise. Humans are loud, annoying, and we apologize for the death metal incident. It was supposed to be classical music, but someone mixed up the playlists. That someone was also Marcus. The image shifted to show the cryopods, hundreds of them visible now that the lights were on. Each facility has 200 pods. That's 3,481,200 humans. We picked carefully. Scientists, engineers, doctors, farmers, artists, and yes, a few Marines. Because let's be honest, we will probably need them. We also included people who just applied, normal people, like Janet from accounting, who knits and makes terrible puns, or Hiroshi, who collects stamps, and once won a hot dog eating contest, because humanity is not just the exceptional people. It's also Janet and Hiroshi. Vecran felt something in his chest tighten. The galaxy had celebrated the death of 8 billion individuals, and here was evidence that humans had planned to save less than 0.04% of their population. They had chosen who would live and who would die, and they had done it with bureaucratic efficiency and, apparently, a sense of humor. The beacon you detected is not a weapon, Elena said, her tone shifting to something gentler. It is an invitation. We are going to wake up soon. Probably in a few days. Maybe weeks, depending on when this message triggers. And when we do, we will remember. She leaned forward and her eyes seemed to stare directly at Vecran. We will remember that someone tried to genocide us. We will remember that the galaxy celebrated, but we will also remember who our friends were. The Kelthans, specifically. Thank you, Administrator Vecran Holt, for your species' assistance in building this network. We could not have done it without you. The command center went silent. 17 species turned to stare at Vecran, who suddenly felt very small despite being 2.3 meters tall. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a nervous tic he had never managed to control. Surprise, he said weakly. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was the most poorly attended meeting in its 600-year history, mostly because half the delegates were trying to flee to distant sectors and the other half were demanding answers from Vecran. The Kelthan administrator stood at the central podium, his diplomatic robes looking significantly less impressive under the weight of 17 species' collective fury. You helped them, hissed Chancellor Morvix, his tentacles writhing in agitation. You helped the humans build a secret network of facilities, and you said nothing when they died. You let us celebrate. Vecran activated his own holographic display, showing communications dated 5 years prior. The humans approached my government in secret. They showed us evidence of the engineered plague, proof that someone was targeting them specifically. They asked for help, and we said yes. Why? Demanded Admiral Korth, his massive claws gouging marks in the council table. Why would you help them fake extinction? Because someone tried to murder 8 billion sentient beings, Vecran said quietly, his 4 eyes meeting the Admiral's gaze without flinching. Because the Kelthans remember our own near extinction 6 centuries ago. Because when someone asks for help surviving genocide, you do not ask for their credentials first. Trade Minister Zelkor's gelatinous form rippled with anxiety, and now they are waking up. 3 million armed, angry humans, scattered across the galaxy. Do you have any idea what you have done? Vecran pulled up another display, this one showing real-time data from the facilities. Cryopods were beginning their revival sequences across hundreds of systems. I know exactly what we have done. We have given humanity a second chance. What they do with it is their choice. The first confirmed awakening came from a facility in the Andromeda sector, 73 light-years from anyone else. The report was clinical and terrifying. 200 humans revived successfully, all in good health, all very much alive. They had sent a simple message. Hello again. We would like to speak with whoever is in charge of not murdering us this time. More facilities reported in over the next week. The humans were waking up in stages, coordinated but not rushed. They were sending diplomatic messages, requesting meetings, and very politely asking if someone could explain what happened to Earth. The tone was almost normal, which made it more unsettling. Humans were supposed to be emotional, loud, and prone to dramatic gestures. This calm professionalism was new, and it worried Vecran more than threats would have. The council convened again, this time with significantly better attendance. Everyone wanted to see what humanity's response would be. The main display showed a live feed from a diplomatic vessel that had been dispatched to meet with human representatives from the nearest facility. The humans who appeared on screen were not what anyone expected. No military uniforms, no weapons, no dramatic speeches about revenge. Instead, there was a woman in her 60s wearing a cardigan who introduced herself as Janet Collins, formerly from accounting. Next to her was a younger man in casual clothes who gave an awkward wave and said his name was Hiroshi Tanaka and he collected stamps. Hello, Janet said, her voice warm and grandmotherly. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. We understand this situation is complicated. Complicated, repeated Chancellor Morvix. His tentacles nodded in confusion. You faked your extinction, hid across the galaxy, and now you are back from the dead. We expected threats, demands, or at least some anger. Janet adjusted her glasses, the gesture that Vecran recognized from old human films as a sign of patience wearing thin. Oh, we are angry. We are furious, actually. Someone killed our entire species or tried to. But anger without a plan is just noise, and humans learned a long time ago that noise does not solve problems. Hiroshi nodded, his expression thoughtful. We had 3 years to think while frozen. Well, not exactly think, but you know what I mean. The people who were awake and monitoring the systems had 3 years to plan. We decided something important. Which is? Admiral Korth asked, his claws tapping nervously on the table. We are not interested in revenge, Janet said firmly. We are interested in justice. There is a difference. Revenge is burning everything down. Justice is finding out who tried to kill us and making sure they cannot do it again. To anyone. The council chamber erupted in discussion. 17 species all trying to process this unexpected response. Humans were supposed to be vengeful, emotional and prone to holding grudges. These humans sounded like therapists, which was somehow more terrifying than warriors. Over the next month, humans continued to wake up across the galaxy. The pattern remained consistent, calm, professional and focused on integration rather than confrontation. They opened communication channels, offered their technology and expertise, and very politely refused to reveal who had helped them build the Genesis network until Vecren finally admitted it publicly. The Kelthan administrator faced significant political pressure from other species, but his government stood firm. "We would do it again," declared the Kelthan premier in a public statement. Any species would have done the same if they had been asked. The fact that we were the only ones the humans trusted says more about the rest of you than it does about us. It was the diplomatic equivalent of a slap in the face, and it worked. The galactic community began to shift from fear and anger to something approaching shame. They had celebrated a genocide, even if they had not known it was engineered. They had thrown parties while humans had been dying, and now those same humans were offering olive branches instead of grenades. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, a human named Patricia Chen, the same scientist who had once created an accidental black hole, published a paper identifying the genetic markers of the Crimson Cascade. Her analysis pointed to a specific bio-research facility in neutral space, operated by a shell corporation with ties to the Vorten Collective. The Vortens were a reclusive species, known for their xenophobia and belief in genetic purity. They had opposed humanity's admission to the galactic community from the beginning, citing humans as disruptive elements and evolutionary mistakes. They had the motive, the means, and apparently the absolute lack of ethics needed to engineer a species-specific plague. The evidence was circumstantial but damning. The Galactic Council launched an investigation, and within weeks they had enough proof to bring charges. The Vorten government denied everything, but their denials grew weaker as more evidence emerged. Someone had tried to commit genocide, and now they would face consequences. The trial lasted 6 months and became the most watched legal proceeding in galactic history. Humans testified, presenting their evidence with clinical precision. Janet from accounting explained the genetic markers in language a child could understand. Hiroshi brought charts and graphs that were beautiful in their clarity, and Captain Elena Frost, freshly awakened and looking exactly like her hologram, gave testimony that left half the courtroom in tears. The verdict was unanimous: guilty. The Vorten leaders responsible were sentenced to life imprisonment. Their government was dissolved, and their species was placed under galactic supervision. It was harsh, but as Janet said during her victim impact statement, "You tried to kill 8 billion people. You do not get to complain about harsh." In the aftermath, humanity began the slow process of rebuilding. Not Earth, which remained a monument to what had been lost, but new colonies on worlds they had been secretly preparing for decades. They integrated into the galactic community with surprising ease, though they never quite lost their reputation for controlled chaos. The humans and Kelthans formed a close alliance built on mutual respect and shared trauma. Vecren was promoted, somewhat against his will, to the position of Galactic Ambassador for Human Affairs. His first official act was to approve a human request to name their largest new colony New Attempt, which he thought was either inspiring or depressing depending on how much coffee he had consumed that morning. 5 years after the awakening, Vecren stood in the observatory deck of Celestial Station Prime, the same place where the galaxy had celebrated humanity's extinction. Next to him stood Janet, who had somehow become the unofficial spokesperson for humanity despite her protest that she was just an accountant. "Do you ever regret it?" Vecren asked, watching the stars through the transparent aluminum. "Letting Earth die? Letting us celebrate?" Janet considered the question, her fingers wrapped around a mug of tea that smelled like flowers in regret. "Every single day," she admitted. "We saved 3 million people. That means we let 8 billion die. The math is not in our favor, but you survived. Humanity survived." "We did," Janet agreed. "And now we get to live with that. The survivor's guilt. The knowledge that we were chosen and billions were not. It is heavy, Vecren. Heavier than you can imagine." They stood in silence for a moment, 2 survivors from 2 species, who understood loss. Finally, Janet smiled, a sad but genuine expression. "But we are still here. Still making terrible puns. Still building things that should not work but do. Still being human. And maybe that is enough. Thekran's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, his species equivalent of a smile. For what it is worth, Janet from accounting, I am glad you survived. Me too, Janet said, raising her tea in a mock toast. Though I do wish someone had warned me that coming back from extinction meant this much paperwork. Do you know how many forms you have to fill out to officially declare your species not dead? It is ridiculous. And there it was, Thekran thought. The humans were back, complaining about bureaucracy and making jokes about their own genocide. The galaxy would never be boring again, and honestly he would not have it any other way. Even if Marcus Webb, freshly awakened and already causing problems, had just submitted a proposal to improve the station's elevator systems. Some things never changed. Thank the stars for that.